Interested in learning about wine, but not sure where to start? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. I'm your host, Haley Bowman, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm a wine enthusiast turned wine educator and founder of the Seattle-based wine tasting business, Cork and Fizz. It is my goal to build your confidence in wine by making it approachable and lots of fun. You can expect to learn everything from how to describe your favorite wine to what to pair with dinner tonight, and so much more. Whether you're a casual wine sipper or a total cork dork like myself, this podcast is for you. So grab yourself a glass and let's dive in. I feel like I always start these interviews by saying, I'm so excited, but it's because I truly am. It is and always will be an honor to have such incredible people take time out of their day to chat with me, and I love getting to share these conversations with you. So today, you're in for an extra special treat. I'll be interviewing Brooke Delmas Robertson, who is the head winemaker and director of wine growing at Delmas Wines in Walla Walla. Brooke has worked at iconic vineyards and wineries in Napa Valley and Australia. She completed her tenure in the Napa Valley as a viticulturist for the Napa Valley Reserve. She also has a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy from the Oregon State University, along with a degree in Enology and Viticulture from Walla Walla Community College. She's also studied for a master's degree in viticultural at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. She holds a UC Davis winemaking certificate and has completed the Simonette and Search Advanced Vine Master Pruners Academy. So she knows what she's doing, is what I'm trying to tell you. She also serves on the board of directors for the Oregon Wine Grower Association, representing Eastern Oregon, is a Batonage, which is a Woman in Wine Level 1 mentor. You'll hear more about that mentorship during our interview. And she also created the Vineyard Technical Group for Walla Walla Valley in conjunction with Oregon State University and the Rocks District Wine Growers. Also, when I hosted my retreat in Walla Walla earlier this year, a tour with Brooke of the Delmas SJR Vineyard was an absolute must. She is that perfect combination of being incredibly knowledgeable while also being able to share that knowledge in a super approachable way. And I think you're going to get that during this interview as well. Everyone that joined me on the retreat back in April agreed that Brooke's Vineyard tour was one of, if not the top highlight of the trip. Many in the wine world would agree that the best wines are made in the vineyard, and Brooke is an expert on the vineyard and the wines. So I'm very excited for you to learn from her. All right, enough waiting. Let's get into the interview. Hello.
Hey, Haley, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
I don't recognize you without your big sun hat on. I feel like that's how we usually...
Without the vineyard accoutrement.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I'm like, am I sure I'm talking to the right person here?
I know.
Well, thank you for joining me for this.
Of course.
When I was thinking of people to interview, I know it's always nice talking to winemakers, but I love that you also have so much background in the grape growing and you know, getting to hear more about that. As we all know, the best wine is made in the vineyard, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it. Well, why don't we just jump into it? And you want to tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. My name is Brooke Delmas Robertson, and my family owns and operates SJR Vineyard, which is in the Rocks District of Milton Freewater, Oregon. And our wine label is Delmas, and we make Rhone style wines.
I love it. And we're going to get into all of that. So if people listening are like, what does all of that mean? We will talk about each of those pieces. But I always love to start with asking, you know, how did you get into wine? What sparked your interest?
Yeah, that's always a good question because people have such a variety of
exactly.
Of
I swear everyone has. It's like it all started at different times. Like some people were kids and they're like, "This is it." Others are like, "I was doing another job," and I was like, "Heck, this sounds fun." So
exactly. Yeah. I am very fortunate that I was born in the Napa Valley, and my parents from an early age, they, saw this as something that could be not just a career for them, but also obviously the lifestyle and, the ability to make your own decisions, not have a boss, close to the land, et cetera, right? So for my whole life, we had tried to kind of make that happen during various stages. Obviously, the Napa Valley is a little spendy, so kind of got boxed out of that pretty early, and we moved around the country from there. But it had always been sort of a passion for our family. And then as my brother and I got older and went off to college, and we're kind of going, what should we do? He smartly went in to study viticulture at Washington State University. And so that was kind of like oh, you're super serious about this. Okay, cool. I studied philosophy, very different
I see you went
trajectory.
a different route there.
Yep. But he was the smart one. So we kind of had a conversation, he and I, when we were, 19, 20, of like, do we really want to do this? Obviously, our parents, this was something that they were very passionate about and wanted for our family. And then we had the conversation of like, you know what? Yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, we've been very close to the wine world for such a long time. Maybe we should just jump off this cliff and make it a career. And that was the decision that we collectively made. And then when he passed away in 2009, it was kind of like, we're doing it. We're making this happen. The vineyard is named for him, Stuart John Robertson.
Oh, I
And
never knew that. That's really nice to
yeah,
know.
yeah. So this is all family encompassed in one little business. So Stuart got the vineyard name, and Delmas is my middle name. So we got kind of both sides.
Oh, you know what? Is it sad that
Yeah.
I'm just realizing that I thought Delmas was like your last name and Robertson was like your married name, so you combined them?
Oh no. Yeah. No. It's that's kind of like the common thing that happens, right? So it totally makes sense. But no, I, again, being very fortunate to live in the time frame that we live in. When I got married, my husband took my name,
I love it.
because down with the patriarchy, and he is the most incredible man. So we have some fun with that. But yeah, Delmas is my middle name. It's also my mother's middle name. It's my grandmother's middle name. This name was a surname at one point, and it goes all the way back to like the French Revolution and Robespierre. So there's a long through line
Wow.
to France.
Oh, I love how much of a family thing it is, and a family thing like by
Yeah.
choice as well, that you all
Yes.
like your parents got into it at first because they thought for all these reasons, to be able to do that. But then, with you and your brother talking and being like, no, but we do want to do this too. It's not that
Yeah.
like you have to do it. You wanted to get into it and make it happen.
Absolutely. And, from that standpoint, like our whole deal is family legacy, right? Of like, my parents say, we're not doing this for us. We're not even doing this for you. We're doing it for the generations to come. And that's very much in the works, currently. So,
Oh, that's so much fun. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how you went from once you decided you were gonna, get into wine and that's what you wanted to do. I know you worked as the director of wine growing for Delmas, and now you are the head winemaker. How did you get to that from studying philosophy? Maybe that's a good place to start.
yeah. Surprisingly, if you talk to a lot of wine growers throughout the world, a lot of them studied philosophy.
You're not the first person I've talked to. I feel like I've heard that at least once before.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing. And like I went to Oregon State University for my undergrad, and I remember like going to an open house and seeing, all of like the colleges kind of laid out with their like, come study with us kind of a thing. And one of the tech sheets, if you will, on philosophy had like a list of careers, and one of them was winemaker, which doesn't always kind of go hand in hand, you would think, but there's so much, because it is a science, right?
Sure.
Uh, but there's so much of kind of that in the ether thinking that you need to do when you are making wine, and there's so much that lives in that, you know, gray area of like 1 + 1 could equal 3, and like what happens if that's the case, and so winemaking is so philosophical from that standpoint. So yeah, I think there was a question in there.
Oh, how
I
did
got
you?
off on a
So
tangent.
yeah, no, it's okay. So you got a degree in philosophy, or you studied philosophy. Then
Yeah,
basically, what kind of steps did you take then in becoming the head wine grower and
that
winemaker?
was it. Thank you, Haley. Keeping me on track.
I
Yeah.
gotcha. We're good.
Yeah. So I went to OSU and then got out of school there. I graduated in 2008, which was a terrible time
Oh yeah.
to leave the collegiate system and try to find a job. So couldn't really find a job. Moved up to Portland and got a job as a receptionist at a construction company. Making like $7 an hour. I mean, like it was bad.
Yeah.
So decided to go back to school, and that was kind of right after Stuart and I had made this life altering decision of like, no, we're gonna get into the wine biz. And then so I moved up here we had just bought what would become SJR Vineyard. And so I moved up here to go to the Walla Community College program in enology and viticulture, and learned a lot there with our connections in the Napa Valley. Once I graduated that program, I went back down to Napa and worked in, I thought was going to be, like a cellar job. But because I had been doing work on our property, knowing nothing, a good friend of ours, Jim Barber, who has a vineyard management company, Barber Vineyard Management, hired me on as an intern, and I loved it, and it was phenomenal. I never thought that I was going to jump in on the viticulture side, but I also had a cellar job also down in Napa that year, and was like, okay, so here's the two sides. Would I rather be hot and dusty or cold and wet?
Hmm.
And I chose hot and dusty.
Like I can see the pros and cons of both.
Yeah. So, but there's so much of our industry kind of draws that line in the sand, right? Of like, are you either a viticulturist or are you a winemaker? And at the end of the day, you can't have one without the other. You cannot not know both sides to be able to either grow the best fruit that you can because you know what the end product needs to be, or to make the best wine that you can because you understand how to grow it that way from the beginning. And so I had the opportunity to work both in cellar and vineyards, primarily vineyards when I was down in Napa. I worked a harvest in the cellar down in Australia at Torbreck, which was invaluable. They make really really high quality Rhone wines as well. So kind of getting into that wheelhouse. And then when I finished my time in Napa, I was the viticulturist for the Napa Valley Reserve. And once everything was picked there, I transitioned into the cellar and was able to learn a lot from those guys as well. So as well as doing that, also driving up to Walla Walla every month or so to check in on our stuff and try to be here for as much of our harvest as could be. At the time, we were really only making like one wine, so it made it easier. It was basically just a couple of days, and I could kind of shoot in, help kind of make the directional decisions on where we wanted our wine to be based on this much knowledge. But I was there. and and then pop back down to Napa and head back into the cellar. So I had all things kind of happening at once. Viticulture is my primary passion in this, as like we started off this pod of, you cannot make a great wine unless your fruit is in order. So once you get that house in order, then the winemaking is easy or easier.
Yeah, I feel like that's an important distinction there.
Yeah. Yeah. But also for us being able to be an estate project where the only fruit that we utilize that goes into Delmas wine comes from SJR Vineyards. So we are in control of absolutely every single aspect of the wine growing process. from the beginning. So, before berry set all the way to harvest is, my decision. So you have a much better understanding of what you're getting into in the cellar when you
Yeah.
can operate that way.
I'm now understanding why you're able to do everything that you currently do now, because it sounds like you did even more.
Yeah.
You're like, this is easy now what I do.
This is no problem. Yeah.
Well, let's dive into a little bit more about, your winery, Delmas, and the vineyards as well. So far I've had your Viognier, and I absolutely love it. I just opened a bottle earlier this week, or else I'd be drinking some now, but that did not last. It was really lovely. So I'd love to talk a little bit more. Let's start with the grapes. As we said, you have to have good grapes to have good wine. So the grapes are found in the Walla Walla region, but specifically in the Rocks district. So
Yes.
can you tell us a little bit more about that AVA? So AVA is American Viticultural Area, basically a distinction of a specific area where the wines made from that area have, specificities to them or have a certain familiarity. And so the Rocks district is one that's within Walla Walla, which is in Columbia Valley in Washington. Tell us a little bit about it.
Exactly. AVAs are such a funny thing, right? There's in the Northwest, right? There are a handful of these cross-border AVAs. And the cross-border AVAs, by the way, only exist in the Northwest. So there isn't currently, this could change. I doubt it, but it might. You never know. There's currently not an AVA that crosses the border between Oregon and California.
I'm trying to
So
think of like what's in that area. Is that like mountains right there? Or is it
it's
actually
the
like
state of Jefferson. I mean, it's the Applegate, right, is right there, like Southern Oregon. So they're
yeah.
very close to the
Mhm.
border, but they're all in Oregon. So there's some very interesting growing happening down in the southern part of the state as well.
Okay.
Uh, but currently it doesn't cross over into California, which is probably for the best. However, up here we have cross-border situations that happen between Oregon and Washington, that happen between Oregon and Idaho, and Washington and Idaho. So this is the only place in the country where you have these sort of cross-border situations. And a lot of that is because of the Columbia Valley AVA, right? The Columbia Valley AVA encompasses basically all of Washington
Yeah.
and the northernmost part of the state of Oregon. So where we are over on the east side of the state, the Walla Walla Valley, which is situated also within the Columbia Valley AVA, the Rocks District AVA is the first and currently only nested AVA within Walla Walla. It just so happens to have all the boundaries drawn on the Oregon side of the border. And those boundaries are drawn predicated on one singular soil series, which is the very cobbly loam free-water series of soil. It's the only one in the United States to have a border based on a soil type. It's the second in the world. The other one is gimlet gravels in New Zealand.
And so talking about that, I wanted to hit on that quick because I think that's super important to highlight, because these AVAs, it might, like the way that you describe, or when you look up what is the definition of an AVA, it says that they have like similar terroir, they have similar, right? And so you would naturally think similar soil, similar climate, similar, like all these things. But from what I learned from you as well, there are other things that often go into defining these AVAs beyond just the soil.
Absolutely. Like a lot of what it is it can be very political, right? Of how you're drawing these borders. So for the most part, like there's 16 different AVAs in the Napa Valley alone, right? There's hundreds of soil combinations that could potentially happen within each of those. So it's more, and there's different aspects, right? Like Oakville is on the floor and on the hillside. Same thing with Rutherford, right? So you have these kind of differentiations within those AVAs. Within the Rocks district, there are differences, but they're based on how many rocks do you have in your particular site. So when you think of our AVA like a river, you think of where the flow of the river is happening in the middle of the river, there's more rock deposits, there's more rapids, the water is moving faster. On the edge of the river, on the shoreline, which is where SJR is, because we're right up against a bench, there's less rocky deposits, more fine soils that kind of filter out in that section. We do have quite a bit of rocks and cobbles there that go down hundreds of feet, but it's a different level of rocky deposits. So we have tiny sections within it that have variation. But for the most part, when you taste a wine from the Rocks District, it's automatic. You know exactly what you're getting. When you see Rocks District on a bottle, on the back label, if it's coming from that area, you'll know exactly what you're going to get. And what you're getting is a salinity and a throughput there that is very, that sort of umami characteristic of the wine. And those, we wanted to be very set on what those boundaries were, instead of being able to have individuals go, hey, could you just include my little, ranch within this? Then it's who's your buddy, who's your friend, instead of, nope, this is what it is, and these are the reasons why. So that when you see the Rocks District on a talker on the shelf, you know what you're getting.
Yeah, I think that's super important because, it is a good thing to know, right? I think a lot of people label reading is impossible. It's so difficult. So the more that you can trust that, like, when I see this on a label, this is what I'm going to get, I feel like the better it is for a consumer.
Exactly. Especially too, because we predominantly make Syrah, right? Syrah is a tough one from a consumer standpoint, because a lot of the times you don't really know what you're getting if you're buying it from the store, because there's so many different kinds. Because Syrah, very much like Pinot Noir, right, is true to site. So a Burgundy Pinot, right, is a Burgundy Pinot, and you know what that is. A Pinot from the Willamette, depending on where it is in the Willamette, can taste totally different because it's expressing that particular site. That grape is extremely specific to typicity. And the Syrah is exactly the same. So Syrah is going to exhibit the flavors of those individual climates in which it's being grown, which can throw people off, right? Because you don't know all the time.
Yeah. Do you know what it is about the grapes that make them like have that characteristic?
I would love to know why.
Right? It's one of those, I'm such a questioner. I'm always just like, yeah, because there are certain grapes that like show it way more. There are some where you can pretty well trust. I feel like, Sauvignon Blanc has a little bit of it, but to me, like Sauvignon Blanc always has a certain characteristic and you can pretty much count on it no matter where it's grown, right? Versus like, a Syrah, like if I got one from the Rocks District versus even just general Columbia Valley, more Western, two totally different wines. There's going to be one that like for a lot of people, Rocks District, it has that funk. You got to like, you got to, ease yourself into it a little bit. Right. And versus like a, Columbia Valley, it's all fruit. It's missing that like, to me, it's missing something.
Right. Exactly. And even within the Walla Valley. So if you go up into the hillsides, Lake Colleen Vineyard Syrahs, of which there's a number of producers that also make a Lake Colleen Vineyard Syrah, it's totally different. Totally different. If you get a Syrah from up the Mill Creek area, also within the Walla Valley, totally different. So within a couple of miles, you're getting a different profile of Syrah just based on where it's being grown. So it's, but there's a, for the Rocks District, sort of the benchmarks are like a gaminess, charcuterie, dark chocolate, cocoa nib, Rainier cherry at times, like there's all of these sort of benchmarks that you get off of those wines that are coming from the Rocks District that for me are just like,
I know I'm with you. I'm like, you're listing those and I'm like, I know I need to get on for the next allocation to make sure I get some Syrah.
Right.
So talking about seeing the Rocks District on the label, I do have to ask, since we mentioned the Rocks District is in Oregon.
The great state of Oregon.
Yes, it is in Oregon, but Walla is a Washington, for the most part, AVA. Yep. And also, I believe your winery is in Washington, technically. Right. So what does that mean, like, labeling wise?
Right. So it's in some ways, this is a non-issue if you're an estate like we are, right?
Okay.
So we get to tell the story of the Rocks District all day long because it's our property. It's we own the vineyard, we own the winery. On the back, we get to say this is being grown in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're buying a Delmas wine, you also know it's in the Rocks District. If you're buying a wine from somebody who's purchasing fruit from the Rocks, you may not know that if they're located in the state of Washington, because currently you are not able to put that your wine comes from the Rocks District on the front label if you are producing and bottling it in the state of Washington because it's in another state.
Okay.
Just like you couldn't purchase fruit from Napa Valley, truck it to Washington, make it in Washington, and call it a Napa Valley wine.
You know, it makes more sense when you put it like that. I could see why they'd want to avoid that. Maybe there needs to be like a distinction where it's like if there's a certain distance between them.
There does. So that and that's exactly why that law is in place, mostly because California, who rightfully so, have a reputation to protect.
Yeah.
They don't want, that happening. Totally get it. However, for the Northwest, where we have these cross-border AVAs, maybe we should reconsider this a little bit. So the TTB, we've lodged a petition with them. It's been sitting there since the Rocks District AVA was approved in 2015.
Wow.
So there's maybe someday that may be amended, but it should only be for people that are located in cross-border AVA situations, because otherwise you're just opening a can of worms that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But you've been here from Walla to our vineyard is 15 minutes.
Yeah, you don't even notice that you cross a border. You're like, wait, what? I'm in Oregon?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the frustrating thing for all of us. However, again, if you're in a state situation and you get to explain to your consumer base where your fruit comes from, it's not as important.
Gotcha.
Someday, though, that will be a big issue, because as consumers become smarter in what they're consuming, they want to know,
yeah,
where does this come from? So, hopefully it gets sorted out at some point.
Fingers crossed, right?
Fingers crossed. Exactly.
Do you ever feel like you're stuck in a rut, doing the same old thing day in and day out? You wake up, go to work, come home, go to bed, and repeat. When life gets busy, it can be easy to fall into that routine and forget how important it is to prioritize joy and fun. But what if I told you there was a way to break out of that cycle? A way to bring more excitement and adventure into your life. And it involves one of the most wonderful things in the world, wine. Introducing my Cork Crew Virtual Tasting Club. This is not your ordinary wine club. This is a community of people who are passionate about exploring new flavors, learning about different wine styles, and having fun along the way. Each month, we'll select 2 styles of wine to focus on. We'll taste them together virtually, all while learning more about the regions that the wines are from and the grapes that make the wine. You'll also have the opportunity to meet winemakers, sommeliers, and other wine professionals through our monthly community events. But it's not just about the wine. It's about breaking out of your routine, trying new things, and having a little fun. Imagine being able to impress your friends at your next dinner party with your newfound wine knowledge. Feeling confident when you walk into a wine shop, knowing exactly what to look for and what you'll enjoy. Imagine adding a little bit of excitement to your everyday life. So why not do something for you? Come join the Cork Crew Virtual Tasting Club and start exploring the endless sea of discovery and joy that is the world of wine. Sign up at my website, corkandfizz.com/thecorkcrew, and don't forget to use code WINE101 to get your first month free. And now, back to the show. All right. So talking about you learned to grow wine in California, right? And specifically Napa Valley. And I remember when we were up there and we did the vineyard tour, I loved learning like how different it was growing grapes in the region in the Rocks District in Walla Walla compared to California. Can you go through kind of some of those changes and, what that means for growing grapes up in Walla Walla?
Absolutely. So the main thing, a couple of main things, but the main thing is our weather situation. So California is extremely spoiled in their weather. They haven't really been in the last handful of years, arguably, but for the most part, they get the sunshine, most of the time. However, up here, our seasons are much shorter. So being that much further up the planet, the advantage is that during the summertime, we get an hour more of sunlight during the growing season, which is why we can kind of catch up to California in terms of ripening. So our bud break happens about a month after theirs. However, we all harvest in September, right? So we get some speed up during this season. During the wintertime,
You're like, and the really bad part, let me tell you.
is another story. Yeah. Yeah. So, we get 100 plus degrees, during the summer. So does California, which is advantageous in some ways. Of course, if it gets over X amount of days of that, it's a little bit much. In the wintertime, though, while we see those extremes during the summer, we also see those extremes going the other way during the wintertime. So we can get -0 for, a week. Like it can get really, really bad. So if you're a grapevine, below 5 degrees Fahrenheit is when your tissue starts dying. So if it's lower than 5 degrees Fahrenheit for hours, then it's really a matter of life support. And are you going to be able to survive through that enough to produce fruit the following year? And the answer is basically you're not. So we get those events more routinely than we have been as the climate continues to change. And so there were a couple of years there where we were -0 for X amount of hours every year. And that was extremely problematic. So SJR Vineyard was planted in 2007. From 2007 until 2017, we had to cut the vineyard to the ground 3 times, which means that over those winters, there was enough vine bud death to negate that we had to start all over. That's not sustainable. You cannot continue to grow, your best
Right.
grapes if you have to cut everything down to the ground every year and force those vines to regrow their entire skeletal structure before then thinking about producing a berry.
Right. And
So
because when you cut it all back, you still produce fruit that year, just not as much, right?
exactly. So another interesting fact about the Rocks District is that the majority of vineyards have been own rooted. And so there's no rootstock that would hinder that. So the vine structure all the way from the tips down to the roots is the exact same thing. So it's Syrah up top, it's Syrah down below. Where other smarter regions are on rootstock, which means that you don't have to deal with this pesky little thing called phylloxera. So, Syrah up top, American variety of grape down below because it's resistant to phylloxera.
Right.
Because we're own rooted all the way down, we can cut all the way to the soil level and Syrah is still going to pop back up. However, what comes back up is not very good. You will get fruit, but there's just not a consistency to the fruit, how much you will get, nor the quality.
Okay.
So we wanted to get to a point where we knew what the quality level was going to be from year to year. And the only way to do that is if you don't have to cut your vineyards down every other year. So we decided to, in the winter of 2016, 2017, we got down to -12 degrees for 4 hours. Created a situation where we had 70% bud death across all varieties across the property.
Wow.
We were going to have to cut it down again. So knowing that and trying to figure out how we can get this legacy situation going. Because if you don't have a vineyard, how does your legacy continue? We needed to get to a point of permanence. So to do that, we cut everything down, and then we created head trained vines. So we call them mini head trained vines because they're basically under 18 inches. They're very tiny. They're about this big. And then by doing that and creating our structure, the vines look like this. They're little
So
zombies.
like a goblet, or like kind of like a goblet a little bit, like a short little goblet, or
Exactly. So goblet, bush vine, head trained vine,
okay.
basically all kind of under the same moniker. The only difference with ours from a regular, really cool head trained vineyard is that we bury these things in their entirety post harvest to protect them from the super freezes that we end up getting. So here's our little structure, right? We have the trunk, we have the head, and 4 to 5 spur positions around that open head that create the shoots that the clusters hang off of, right? We can bury up to like here.
So
we
over
bury
the goblet.
exactly. We bury the whole thing, and that protects the vines in their entirety, buds included, from the killing freezes. So that's a big one that no one should or would do if they didn't absolutely have to.
Oh man, what question I was gonna ask? Oh, I mean, one, I think that's so impressive to just like think about doing that, about being like, because the thing before that you were doing, and that a lot of people in that area and I've heard of, is like you take one of the shoots. So, for people that are listening, when you're thinking of a grapevine, I think a lot of people think of the T structure, like there's like the root in the middle and then the shoots come out like a T. But then there's like multiple, there's not just the top T, there's like bottom and middle T. And
right.
You would take one of those bottom shoots, and you'd bury that. And that would be like your savior if you had to cut everything, because that would stay warmer underneath the ground is kind of the idea, right?
Absolutely. So we're basically taking that concept, which is burial canes is what that's called. And so on your vertical shoot positioned vine, your T,
yep,
you have a shoot coming off of the base of the T, and then you bury that. And then if you need to cut this down, you take this and then you grow that up the following year. So that was like the leading technology in this area, and a lot of Canada, by the way, because they also grow grapes and they also get cold. So that was the leading technology in terms of how do we actually get these things to live longer. If we need to cut everything down, we need our insurance policy. And so burial canes were exactly that. However, again, learning to grow in California and Australia, where you have the ability to see what a 125-year-old grapevine actually looks like, they're all head trained. They're all head trained. There is I don't quote me on this because I'm sure somebody's going to be like, actually, but as far as I know, there is no 125-year-old vertically shoot positioned vineyard, because that's a relatively new idea to make production a little bit easier. Because if you think about it, if your vine is like this and this T level is at this height, you can do all of your work standing. If your vine is 18 inches off the ground, there's a little more labor involved, right? However, over time, that labor decreases because you have this permanence established, and the vine instinctively just knows what you want it to produce. Whereas if you're on VSP, vertically shoot position vine, you have the same level of work going in every year. There's a lot of canopy management. You have to open things up routinely. Whereas because you're in a 2D situation, right? You're a piece of paper. Whereas if you're a head trained vine, you're a 3D entity. So you're getting light from all angles. You're getting airflow, different than if you're
just straight across.
Yeah.
Interesting. So like a lot of work initially, but it evens out over time.
It evens out over time. And in fact, there's less canopy management that is needed on a head trained vine because of that 3D situation. than on a VSP vine where it's just the line.
And I know, so just I know there's going to be people asking. Can you tell us what does canopy management mean?
Canopy management is basically all of the green stuff. So all of the leaves and all of the shoots that are going up through the trellis system, which is all the wires that are holding up the vine during the season. A lot of times, in order to get, again, the best quality fruit that you can, you need to open up the canopy, expose the clusters to light and airflow
Got
to
it.
help them ripen at a more even pace, as well as to prevent mildew and other disease pressure from coming into your fruit zone.
Awesome. Okay. And this version, so this training method that you created, which is like the head, like the gobelet, the goblet kind of style. So like for people listening, when you see those, I feel like it's always when I pass a vineyard, I'm like, what are those crazy structures like growing at like those mini trees growing out of the ground? Like that's what the
Exactly.
goblet is, right?
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
But the mini version was essentially something of your own creation. You figured this out. Have you noticed that other wineries have adopted this or other vineyards adopting this in your area?
Yeah, there's other people are starting to utilize it here within the Rocks district. I know that there's a bunch of growers up in Canada that do something very similar to this. It's not exactly the same, as they're using it with hybrid grape varieties on a much tighter spacing than what we're doing. But there are other growers here within the Rocks that are starting to at least think about, maybe going to a different type of a structure that maybe is a little more protective. There's a lot of different ways that you can structure a grapevine. And what's really cool about the Rocks District is everybody is kind of figuring out their own way and what makes sense at their site. There's warmer sites within the Rocks where maybe you don't need to do this. And I would not advise somebody to do it if they knew that their site was going to be protected from the winter freeze,
Right.
going forward. There's no reason to bury your grapevine unless you're in a location that necessitates it. Now, with climate change going as fast as it is, maybe someday we won't have to bury the vines. And wouldn't that be great? But we will have established the head train structure, which is the most important.
Nice. Okay, so now we've talked about like the grapes and how they're planted. I want to ask about, so it's called the Rocks District. And
Yes.
a big reason for that is all of the rocks. For anybody
Yeah.
that's ever visited the Rocks District, the soil just looks like rocks. That's what it is.
Yeah.
You're like, how is anything growing there? That's just a pile of rocks. And this is
Right.
very similar to like there's an area in France. Is Châteauneuf-du-Pape, is that like that's a famous one, right? For like they also have pure just rocks for soil. But I have two questions. I'm curious, like one, what kind of effect does that have on the grapes and the wine being grown in the rocks? And then two, I've heard this before, and I know like it's partially true, but partially not, is that something about the rocks and the heat. Like I've definitely heard before that like the rocks trap in heat and warm the grapes up overnight when it's cold, or the sunlight bounces off the rocks and gives the grapes heat. I know like some of it's correct and some of it's not. So I'd love for you to like clarify what is.
Absolutely. No, that's sort of the common through line, right? Of why would you be here is that heat reflection. So couple things. So Châteauneuf-du-Pape has an area within it. That map is Chateauneuf and it has all of like the different growing areas within it. There's 5 different soil types within Châteauneuf-du-Pape. So all of that area isn't 100% La Croix, which is what they call their little gallet section. So
Okay.
their rocky section is located in one area. Then they have a limestone rocky section that's different. And then they have a sandy section and a gravelly section. It's really cool. The rocky section that they have is extraordinarily rocky. The main difference between their rocks and cobbles and gravels and ours is that theirs are granitic. They are coming from the Alps. It is a much older rock than what's going on in the Rocks District, where those cobbles and gravels are volcanic. They're
Oh.
basalt based that have been rocked by the river, right? So much younger geological age of our rocks versus their rocks. Another big difference is that their rocks only go down like a meter. It just goes down 3 feet, and then it hits a hard pan, which is basically an impassable clay layer, where if you're a grapevine, your roots go down, they hit that, and then they go sideways. They don't continue to go down through that structure because they can't break through it.
Right.
In the Rocks District, hundreds of feet of those cobbles and gravels. So our vines, their root systems can dig down and search for water and kind of sprawl out, as much as they want. So it creates a different vine structure. Our vines are bigger, their vines are smaller, just because of what their feet are in. Okay, so that's Chateauneuf. What was the rest of
The
your
rocks,
question?
mostly the rocks. I want to know what do the rocks actually do being in the vineyard?
Right. Okay. So they, contrary to popular belief, they do not continue to heat overnight.
Okay.
So they drop temperature just as fast as they pick up temperature. So, however, during the daytime, where that's our greatest advantage, is because they do suck in more of that sunlight during the day and reflect that heat back into the fruit zone, which for us, again, remember, is very close to the ground. So we're able to capitalize on that extra heat to ripen our vineyard faster, so that we can get to a phenolic level of ripeness in the fruit earlier, to pick earlier, to shut the vineyard down earlier before the freeze hits. So it's
Right.
extremely advantageous. And those little rocks, I mean, oh boy, they can heat up. I mean, they can heat up to like 150 plus degrees Fahrenheit. Like, they get hot. So reflecting into the fruit zone just speeds up that ripening process that much faster.
Cool. Okay. So the
But they do get
reflection
cold.
reflection is
Yeah.
correct, but heat through the night not correct. They are cold in the evening.
Yes. Yes. They do get cold. They will cool down. Yeah.
All right. So we've talked a lot about the grapes, but you also took over head winemaker position at Delmas this year. I'd love to know, with so much care or so much time just spent in the vineyard, like, what is your philosophy in the cellar when you're making the wine?
Basically, because our focus is predominantly vineyard first, it allows for us to be relatively hands off when we bring the fruit into the cellar. So again, from a ripening standpoint, our acids are where they want to be. Typically, our bricks level, the sugar level is exactly where we want it to be. So we don't really have to add too many things when we get the fruit into the cellar in order to make this style of wine that we like to make. So we do some barrel ferments, we do a lot of open top ferments, we do inoculate, and I will tell you why. So there's a lot of people that talk about native fermentation, right? It's kind of this hot topic, like and it is really cool, really cool, if you can do it. For us, wines from the Rocks District have a very high pH. We are a very nutrient rich area. So there's a lot of potassium in the soil that then gets into the fruit that increases the pH. Can make wines a little unstable. Now, that just comes from UC Davis. So they have not studied this area. And when I've talked to them about it, they all think we're insane for making wine up here with a pH above 4. However, our wines are safe. We just have to treat them a little bit differently. And to ensure that we are not starting off our ferments with pediococcus or some bad yeast that can create faults, in fact, in your wine
Okay.
later on, we will inoculate with, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is actual yeast, just to ensure that we don't have any sort of issue because of the pH situation. We do let things kick off native, but the second we notice something going off, we will inoculate.
Oh, okay. So you will, it's not that you like kind of wash off or try to get all the yeast off or
No,
whatever to
no, no,
stop
no.
it. It's
Yeah,
like, we'll let it do its thing. But
yeah.
then when it needs guidance, and the thing too, I think people need to remember is like the yeast that you're adding is natural. It's not like
Oh
I
yeah,
feel like that's like something people get confused on too, is it's like, oh, it's some, chemically produced, it's like, I mean, and chemical doesn't even write, like synthesized
right.
or whatever, but like it is natural yeast you're adding. It's just like if you added yeast when you're making bread, it's not,
Oh yeah,
you know,
right. Exactly. I mean, yeast is a natural product.
yeah.
It's surrounding us right now. So it's just that it's that level of hands-on, hands-off type of winemaking, right? Which, believe me, I would love to be even more hands-off than we are. But in order to make, again, the best possible product, it's not really possible for us.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's so important. I really love that philosophy with a lot of winemakers. Whenever they say like we're natural, we're sustainable, to
Right.
the point that it makes sense for us to make quality wines, right? It's like we understand that like
Exactly.
Mother Nature controls us, and so we have to do what she get, it's what she gives us, and then we got to make it work from there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's basically the point, is like, we're so not in control of any of this. And and that's where that philosophical side comes in, right? Is like, you have to live in the gray area. There's some things that you can control, and there's some things that are just going to happen the way that they're going to happen. And we don't fine or filter our wines because we feel that for us and the wines that we make, that would just strip out a little too much of the some of the things that we love and enjoy. So like for our Viognier, great example, we don't fine or filter that. It can be a little bit cloudy, but a lot of that is because we do batonnage on the wine for its entire life. So we're stirring those barrels constantly to kick up the dead yeast at the bottom of the barrel back into suspension in the wine, which creates a more creamy mouthfeel. So
It's lovely.
it's a little cloudy, but
Oh,
the quality
100%
is
worth it.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly,
I
exactly.
will take cloudy wine any day if I get that beautiful creamy mouth feel and the that bready flavor. Oh, I absolutely love it. It's so nice. I'm like, those two other bottles I have are not going to last long.
Right.
All right. I do want to talk about your wine, but before we do that, I do just want to shout out, you're an absolute powerhouse. I've known this since the moment I've met you, but if there was
Thank
any
you.
doubt, I mean, you pruning grapevines when we came and visited during the retreat at what, 7 months pregnant or something?
Yeah, yeah, that was intense.
But with that in mind, I have to ask you, what is it like being a woman in wine? Have things changed? Has it felt more accepting, or are there still kind of plenty of challenges to overcome?
I think there's always challenges. I hope someday that that's not the case, but especially coming from the side of wine growing that I came into, being on the viticulture side. Both of these things, winemaking, viticulture, they're physical jobs. You're not sitting on your ass all day. You are physically doing things with your body. So there's a very set amount of people that are kind of predispositioned to go into those types of industries. And there's not a lot of women in viticulture. Period. There's
Yeah.
just not. In every viticulture job I have ever had until I moved up here, I was the only woman on the entire staff. So it's just different, and there should be more of us that kind of get into that realm, especially on the viticulture side. Winemaking, because it's a science. I mean, both of them are sciences, but when you're studying it in school, it's very much a science, and more women are going into winemaking, and arguably some of the best winemakers on the planet are women.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, I mean, our palates are different. We can perceive things on another level. And quite frankly, we multitask a little bit better. So that's all positive stuff. But viticulture, since it's agriculture, it's hard, and it's very long hours. And if you're going to be a mom, these are things that you need to consider, and make sure you have the right support in order to continue to be able to do that, because both of which are really hard. Being a mom is really hard. Trying to raise 12,000 grape baby plants is really hard, you know? So you have to be able to find that balance. And I would say that the wine industry in general does provide you the capability of that balance because it's seasonal, right?
True.
So I would love it if more women would get involved in this business because it's so rewarding on so many levels, but it is definitely very male dominated right
Yeah.
now.
Do you have any recommendations for like women that want to get into it or want to get started? What are some areas that they can, start putting their toe in the water?
Yeah. There's a really great organization called Batonage. It's out of the Napa Valley. It's run by women, essentially for women, but anybody. And you can apply to be a mentee of some of the best and brightest minds in the wine industry, whether it's on a production level, viticulture or winemaking, but also from a marketing and sales point of view. Is there's so many different facets here. And if you want to learn more about what do I do if I wanted to jump into this, or I've always thought about getting into production and how do I go about trying to get a job at the coolest place in town or whatever, I would seek this organization out because it is so valuable to be able to just bend the ear of somebody that's been doing this for decades, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm also available if anybody has questions. Feel free. I'm happy to help. Feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll try to give you a couple minutes of what I think would
Of
be
her
best.
very,
I don't
very
know.
valuable time of doing
Yeah.
everything else that she's doing.
But I mean, like, I wouldn't be in the position that I am if I didn't take the time as, a 22, 23-year-old to go down and talk to some of these women who've been doing this. And the best advice I got was from Celia Welsh, who's a unbelievable winemaker in Napa Valley. And she was like, look, you got to get out. You need to get out of your region, go travel, go work everywhere you possibly can, because you're going to learn something from those people that is thinking completely outside the box of where you are. And then you can take that knowledge and apply it where you are, and people are going to think you're brilliant. I didn't invent head training. That's been happening forever, right? However, because I was able to see it somewhere else, then you go, oh, we can do that here. That's no problem. And then everybody grows, right? So you got to go talk to these people. They're happy to help most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, in general, from what I've heard, yeah, almost every winemaker out there wants to help other winemakers. They know it's a hard job, and in viticulture as well, that like it's a hard job that they don't really need to make it harder for you. I'm sure there's those few out there that are like, I had to do all the hard stuff, so you do too. But like most people, I feel like are like, here, let me help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, no one should go from vineyard intern to vineyard manager in one leap.
Right.
No, like, you have to go through the tiers. Just like nobody should go from dishwasher to executive chef in a year. That should never happen. Like, you have to go through the steps. But once you go through them, you just need to be on the right path. And if someone can help you get on that path, then by all means.
Yeah. Okay. Before we get to my last little speed round that I have, we need to talk about your wines. We've kind of hinted at some of them, but I would love to give you a chance. Okay. What wines do you make? And if people want to try them, which, I mean, if you're listening to this and you don't, come on, man, what are you doing? How can they do that?
Fantastic. Okay. So we made one wine for a very, very long time. Up until 2018, we made one wine. And that's basically become our flagship. And it is a Syrah Viognier co-ferment. It is absolutely fantastic. It's about, depending on the year, 40 to 50% new oak. It's 14 months aged, so not too terribly long. And it is a very long-lived wine. So we sell it in 3-packs primarily. We also have club options where you can get a little bit more, but minimum of a 3-pack. And that's an advantage because, as you were saying, Ailey, with your Viognier, you drink one now, You lace them down. And the wines completely change over time, which is so exciting. You know, as a wine consumer, that's what
Oh
I
yeah.
love about wine is it's always changing. So that is our flagship Syrah Viognier co-ferment. Then we make a singular Viognier, which is made in a Kundro style. So it's a little bit bigger of a white wine. And we make a multi-vintage Grenache-based field blend,
Okay.
which is a little bit, it's predominantly Grenache. It's like 80+% Grenache, but then it has a small amount of varieties, the rest of the varieties we have on property. So we have some Syrah, some Cinsault, Mourvedre, and a little teeny tiny bit of Viognier that goes into that blend. Then we make a Magnum only 100% Syrah, 100% new oak, 100% whole cluster wine that is called the Peddler. And we only make like 100 of those bottles. So they're very, very rare, but delicious. Currently, you can find our wines at delmaswines.com. If you sign up on our website on the offering page to receive some of our newsletters, in that, we will also give you the opportunity to have first access to our very rare allocation offerings, of which we have one coming up. So August 16th to September 13th. That is a 1 month when you can purchase some of our wines for fall shipping in October. So with this offering, we will have the newest vintage, the 2021 Syrah, which is just a beautiful vintage. We're very, very proud of these wines. It was low yields. There's not a lot of them. And then we will also have the multi-vintage Grenache field blend, as well as the Peddler available for the fall shipping window. So I would encourage people to go sign up now, and you will be getting an email in 2 weeks with the notification that you can log in and purchase those wines.
Cool. Perfect. And yes, and for people listening later on in the future to still get on that newsletter, like you said, I think you do it. Is it like twice a year that you do the allocations?
Twice a year, we have one for spring shipping, which is in May, and then we have one for fall shipping, which is in October.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. And I realized I had one last questions before the speed round, because I mean, I have to ask this with what you guys are. Is there anything new that's coming, or anything that that either new that is coming or something that you want to do? I'll leave it open to either.
I have both.
Oh, yay.
So the new thing that we're doing is we're doing a new wine, and it is another blend, different type of blend. This is mostly a Syrah based blend, but it's got 46% Grenache in it, and again, little pieces of the other varieties, the Cinsault, the Mourvedre, and the Viognier as well. This is the BDR blend. So Brooke Delmas Robertson gets her name on a bottle.
It.
So this is going to be kind of the direction that we will be going, is we want to represent all areas of the Rhone with what we're doing, and blends Chateauneuf, right? It's they throw all 13 to 16 varieties in their wines, and we hope to do something very similar. So that wine will be debuted in 2025. So
you think so far ahead.
I know it's currently in barrel, but this again, the advantage of the estate, right? Is like you're always thinking like 3 years back and 3 years forward, so minimally. So that's something that's coming up that is actively in motion. Something that we will also be doing over time is there's a small section of the property that we're going to be replanting, and we're going to be replanting with more Rhone varieties. So more Cinsault, a different clone of Grenache, which I'm really excited about, more Mourvedre, and a little bit of Grenache Blanc and Bourbolenc.
Ooh.
All of these varieties are within the Rhone Valley. And so that'll be happening over time to go into this BDR blend that we're doing, as well as to create a Magnum only rosé.
Oh, okay.
which I'm so stoked about. So this is going to be like a Provençal style of rosé, predominantly Cinsault, Mourvèdre, and Grenache. So think Bandol. That is
Yes.
like my
Okay.
guiding light. So hopefully we can make that happen. It has yet to be planted, obviously, but again, like 20 to
Gotta think
50
out. Yeah.
years, yeah, like we'll have that. Hopefully, in the next 10 years, we'll be able to have that available for people as well.
Cool, man.
So
So
yeah,
glad I asked that question. I was like, I knew I was missing something.
we got stuff. We got stuff happening all the
Woo!
time.
All right. So before I let you go, I call it my speed round. I basically just ask a few favorite questions where it's not meant to be like, I don't say speed round as in like I want you to give the answer as fast as you can. It's more like, don't worry about
Okay,
thinking about it too much. It's just fun. And like
nice.
it doesn't have to be the super thoughtful answer.
Oh, perfect. Okay, I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah.
Okay. So starting off, what is your favorite wine at the moment?
Ooh, I love German whites.
Oh,
Um, Gewürztraminer, obviously, Rieslings. I mean, during the summertime, like you want something that's lifted and beautiful and has all those floral qualities, but isn't like hit you over the head. So yeah, German whites.
okay. I like it. All right. How about favorite wine region that you've ever visited?
I mean, Chateauneuf. I mean,
Like, is
you
it
know,
not obvious, Haley? That
it's
was such a
it
dumb.
is the most beautiful and most confusing and like every time we go there, there's some little piece of information that just having like a loose conversation over a meal, you go, oh my God, that's brilliant. We need to start implementing that. Like, how did we not think of this? Every time we go, we come away with something that's super impactful. So, Chateauneuf.
That's enough. Okay, now a wine region you'd like to visit.
Oh, that's a great question. Anywhere in Italy,
Really? Just anywhere?
anywhere. Italian wines are so unique and I don't understand them at all. And I need to because they're so good. And yeah, I would love to spend more time in Italy from a wine
Yeah.
point of view. Yeah.
No, I'm with you. I think that's an area. It's so funny when anybody who studies wine is always like, yeah, Italy's the hardest.
Because there's so many varieties that we just don't see here, and
Yep,
they're
yep.
all so classic and beautiful, and the wines are amazing, but you cannot translate them here. Like, you cannot really grow Nebbiolo in the United States. It doesn't work.
Okay.
So I'd love to go figure that out.
Okay, how about your favorite wine and food pairing?
Like a really, really, really good bolognese,
Okay.
right? With I really enjoy it with our uh
Gotta shoot it.
100% Syrah Peddler. It's just that it's a powerhouse wine, but it has all of those fruit components as well. And that paired with like this just brilliant red sauce. Oh my God, it's fantastic. Also, like don't overlook like a Chenin Blanc, with like spaghetti with clams. I mean, just, like those are
Mm-hmm.
some real classics. Something to cut through that butter and fat, just beautiful.
Yes, yes, I love
A
it.
lot of pasta over here, so
You never go wrong with pasta.
right? Yeah, exactly.
Okay, last one. The Your top recommendation for either a bottle of wine or a style of wine under $15 if you're trying to stay on a budget.
Under $15. I would say for those of you fortunate enough to have a Trader Joe's nearby,
Yes.
I'm number one, jealous of you. Number two, European whites at Trader Joe's. They're basically $4 to $10, and you very rarely will you be able to go wrong. I would kind of steer against maybe Rieslings in that price range because the sugar level is going to be so high. You're going to think you're like drinking a lollipop. It's just too much. But Vino Verde, there's a bottle of Vino Verde that is at Trader Joe's that I'm not kidding you is like $5, and I would drink that all day every day.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah.
that one is lovely. They also have they have a Vouvray, I think. They have a
Yes.
Muscadet, yeah, they've got, those whites are if I was somewhere where I didn't have my wine cellar with me and and I had a Trader Joe's nearby, that would be
You're
what
good.
I would pick up.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're good. And for people that don't know anything about wine, you can just go to Trader Joe's, buy a case of different bottles of European wines from there and try them out. You're not going to spend more than $200, and you're going to walk away with 12 bottles of wine, and you're going to learn something. So highly recommend.
I like that. Good recommendation. Have a Trader Joe's wine tasting party. Just, grab a case of wine and invite everyone over.
Yeah. Every time I go back down to Portland, I walk away with way too much. Trader Joe's is on my itinerary for places to go. It's Din Tai Fung, Nordstrom Rack, and Trader Joe's. This is what I go to Portland for these days.
Oh man, I love it. Well, thank you so much, Brooke, for joining me for the conversation.
Of course.
I learn something new every time, and really. And I'm definitely getting on that list. The more we talk about that Syrah, I'm damn it, I need that Syrah in my cellar right now.
You need it. You need it in your life, Haley.
Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. If you loved it as much as I did, I would so appreciate if you could do me a favor and head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. You can also leave a rating on Spotify or Google or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you know a wine lover in your life that would enjoy this episode, please share it with them. I would really appreciate it. As Brooke mentioned, they make a very, very limited amount of wine at Delmas. So the best way to try their wines is to join their wine club, which you can do by going to delmaswines.com/register. As she mentioned, they also do have occasional times for you to purchase 3 packs of the individual Delmas wines without joining the membership. And this happens twice a year for fall shipping and spring shipping. We are currently in the fall shipping window. So if you listen to this and you want to try these wines, now is the best time to invest and get yourself some wine. So as we are recording this, if you are listening to this within the first week or two of when I've released it, the current time to purchase is between August 16th and September 13th, 2023. You can simply head to their website, create an account. You don't have to join the wine club. You just have to create an account, and then you will have the option to purchase the 3 allocations. I would also recommend getting on their newsletter, whether you're listening to it now or later. And you can find that at delmaswines.com/register. And that newsletter will tell you when their wines are available. In next week's episode, I'll be sharing my favorite wine gadgets. In all honesty, I think some wine gadgets are absolutely ridiculous and quite unnecessary. So you can trust that these gadgets that I'll be sharing with you are ones that I've actually found useful. Thank you again for listening. And if you want to learn more about wine, come follow me at Cork and Fizz on Instagram. And if you're interested in exploring new wines and joining an incredible community of wine lovers, be sure to sign up for my virtual tasting club, The Cork Crew. Use code WINE101 to get your first month absolutely free. Cheers!